I never seen such desolation. I think we drove for a mile and there wasn't a building hardly standing.
Nobody knew what was going on. They called the situation fluid, but fluid means that nobody knew anything.
It was different. If I had done something else, I don't know what I would have done.
Okay, we're talking today with Rob Durham, served in Iraq in 2006, 2007. All right, and to start off, and you're kind of a transient. I normally introduce people by where they're from, but you live now in California officially?
Correct, yes.
Right, okay, but are currently in Michigan for kind of a long-term work assignment.
Right.
All right. Well, let's begin at the beginning then. Where and when were you born?
New London, Connecticut, 1975.
Okay, and then did you grow up there, or did you move a lot?
We moved. My dad was a Vietnam vet and went to school. Ended up going to medical school in Mexico, so I was almost born in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up in El Paso, Texas for his internship, and then finally in Arizona at the age of 5, and that's where I grew up, small town in Arizona.
All right, and what town was that?
Globe, Arizona.
Okay, and is that near anything?
Desert. It's about an hour east of Phoenix.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then did you graduate from high school there?
Graduated high school.
Okay. And what year was that?
1993.
Okay. All right, and then what did you do after you finished high school?
Spent a year at University of Arizona, transferred to a small school in Kansas for my undergrad.
Okay, which school was that?
Benedictine College in Atchison, Kansas, small town, not near much either.
Okay, and how did you wind up picking that?
Through just research and people suggesting that they'd heard of it and went and visited, and it was a good, solid school, good liberal arts school, and I liked it right away.
All right, and what did you major in?
Majored in history.
All right, yeah, one of those highly profitable career fields.
Of course, that's where everyone goes. That's why they go for a history degree, to get rich.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, and then when did you graduate?
2001.
Okay, and what did you do after you finished college then?
I taught school for a year, 4th grade actually, 1 year of 4th grade, and that was it.
Okay, and where were you doing that?
This was right next to my hometown, Miami, Arizona, same general small town.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then of course while you were doing that, I mean 9/11 happened.
9/11, right.
So were you in the class or getting ready for it?
I was
whatever?
waking up and I got a phone call. It was actually my mother. I had to pick her up at the airport later that night, and she said, "Turn on the TV, we're being attacked." And who knows what that means? So I said, "What?" And I turned it on, and there it was, at Pentagon and the Twin Towers. And oddly enough, I thought, there's no way we can have work today. This is too big. And we did have work. We had to go to school. So that was strange. I was kind of annoyed.
Yeah, I don't know. What did you just try to carry on a normal day at that point? Or?
Well, the kids had questions, so I'd explain to them to the best of my ability, to a 4th grade mind, what was happening and why it's important. I don't think we discussed a whole lot of subject matter other than that day.
Yeah, and at that point, you really didn't have any idea of who actually did this. I mean, sort of the announcement that Al-Qaeda, we know who did it, that comes just a little bit later.
Right. I being a history major, of course, I think suspected a little more than most people who didn't read about it.
Right.
But yeah, it was a big deal and a lot of unanswered questions.
All right. Now, at that point, you only stayed in teaching for a year.
For about a year, right.
And so what motivated you to move on to something else?
You know, first of all, in elementary education, you don't teach what you want, you teach everything. Teaching's fine, it's just a matter of what subject and what grade level.
Right.
So it was just time to move on. You know, it was an experience and it was nice, but time to move on.
Okay, and so then what did you get into next?
Boy, 2003, 2004, it's a tough one. What did I do? Well, eventually in 2005, I joined the Army. I really don't remember between 2002 and 2003 and 2004. It must not have been important.
Well, did you just sort of pick up miscellaneous jobs or move around in and out of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did some contract work with some businesses. Nothing, you know, in terms of their billing, nothing solid, but just to keep me busy, pay my bills, and figure out what I was going to do next.
All right. And then did you try some graduate school too?
I did. Actually, yeah, 2003, 2004, when I got a job as an advisor at a community college. Things kind of settled down. Did some research methods courses in grad school, and then soon after that, I joined the Army.
All right. And where were you? What community college were you at? Or
I was at Gila Community College in my hometown, Globe, Arizona, taking online courses from Fort Hays State.
Okay.
How I got to Fort Hays State, I don't remember, but another Kansas school.
Right.
Yeah.
But also it had online courses available too
That was
at
a
that
major
point,
reason,
and there
sure.
wouldn't have been that many necessarily to choose from. But
Makes
okay, you
sense.
do that. All right. So now, do you remember the decision process that took you into the Army, or at what point you decided, okay, that's what I'm going to do?
I think part of it was just doing something for the country, serving in some way. My dad was big on saying, you know, I'm not saying you have to join a service, but you should do something to give back to your country. And he was a Vietnam vet, a Marine. And I thought this is a perfect time. I was divorced at the time. The job was fine, but it wasn't a career. I was still relatively young, and I thought, you know, why not? I could just do it and then stop when I want eventually. And that was the kind of thinking of doing something kind of bigger than yourself and a life experience, at least.
Okay. And at this point, I mean, had you been following the news about what was going on over in Iraq and all of that? So you, and Afghanistan at that point, because if you go in the service and they do send you someplace, you have no idea where that might be.
Right.
Yeah.
To be stationed, I mean, you know you're going to go somewhere, a hostile combat zone. You just don't know where you're going to be stationed until then.
Right. Okay. So make that decision. And but 2005, things in Iraq are not looking necessarily all that good at that point.
Right.
Because you had insurgency and so forth, and they had yet to sort out a strategy that could deal with that effectively. There was also stuff going on in Afghanistan on a lower scale at that point. So yeah, there were a lot of possibilities. And of course, you know, you also have, particularly within the Army, just enormous numbers of people doing all kinds of things, both in the U.S. and other parts of the world too.
Right.
So quite a few options. Now, when you enlisted, okay, how did that process work?
So you go into the recruiting office and you say, I want to join the Army, and they kind of figure out if you're qualified is their main goal. Are you qualified? You know, legally, morally, etc. Once they establish that you're qualified, now that the tool is, okay, what are you going to do?
Right.
What can you do? And I thought, you know, when people think of the military, they don't think, say, I'm going to go be a cook. You know, most kids growing up think, I'm going to go do the whole combat thing. So I said, yeah, I want to be in infantry. I didn't realize I had so many other jobs I didn't really care.
Right.
That's what I wanted to do. And oddly enough, he said, oh, you have a college degree, you should do such and such job and use your brain and this and that. And I said, well, I don't really want to do what you're saying. I want to do what I want to do. And he said, okay, fine, no problem. And you take your test, you do your physical, and he says, see you in 2-3 weeks, whatever the time frame is, and we'll send you off to basic.
Okay. And where'd you go for basic?
Fort Benning, Georgia.
All right. And what was that experience like?
You know, it was kind of annoying, I think is the word, because you're used to being free to eat when you want, do what you want, sit down and watch TV. And for an American, now that's taken away, it's a big deal. They tell you when to eat, they tell you when to sleep, tell you what you're going to do, when you're going to do it. It wasn't hard or abusive, but it's just you're not used to that as an American. You're used to just doing what you want when you want.
Okay. So the way for you, that the biggest obstacle was just getting used to the regimentation itself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a regimented person, but just having someone else regiment you.
Yeah.
You know, the training was neat. You got to do neat things, but they tell you just how you're going to live your life for the next, 14, 16 weeks, whatever it is for training.
All right. And so you do it sort of, are you doing that whole period at Fort Benning, or do you move on something?
Infantry trains all at once, just all straight through.
All right. And what kinds of people were training you?
The drill sergeants, I mean, as far as I remember, they were E6s, E7s, so they had been in a while. I remember a couple of them saying they had some community college. The main thing I remember is that they loved being in the Army. They loved being infantry. It was a very pride thing. You know, infantry is better than everybody. That was their pushing. You're better. Train harder. You know, enjoy the pain. That was kind of their motto. Okay.
Well, how intense was the physical part of the training?
I mean, I guess it's all relative. If you are in shape and you're used to training, it's not really as bad as you thought it was going to be, at least from my opinion. For someone who just didn't spend time doing physical activity, of course, it was a wake-up call. I don't think it was. I thought it was going to be a lot worse. Put it that way. I thought it was going to be so much worse, and it wasn't.
All right. Now, what kinds of people were training alongside you?
Oh, mostly, young kids with either GEDs or high school diplomas, maybe a couple with some community college. I don't remember anyone else having a degree. And I was probably the oldest. I think I was the oldest by at least 5 years.
Did you get treated differently either by the other recruits or the drill sergeants?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. I think the fact that I was older, helped a little bit. The drill sergeants, in some cases, I remember just kind of let me slide just because I guess they didn't think I needed as much attention as the other ones. And then I was a squad leader the whole time, so I was in a leadership position, and a lot of the leadership position would change because someone would mess up.
Yeah.
It's a little responsibility, but they just kind of left me alone to a degree.
Yeah. But you were somebody, you said you're kind of a regimented person yourself. You kind of figure out what they were doing and just go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what to expect, and I think the big part is just accepting where you are, and a lot of the kids would fight that. That's the mental aspect. You're not at home.
Right.
You're going to wake up in a different place.
Now, were these kids from all over the country or one region of it?
All over.
Okay.
Yeah. Basically, Fort Benning is a place where they train infantry. So if you signed up anywhere in the U.S., you're going to go there to get trained.
All right. And now, when you were not being trained, I mean, to what extent do you have any amount of free time or access to the outside world or anything like that?
No access to the outside world other than mail.
Okay.
At night, you'd have maybe half hour, an hour, as far as I remember, to write letters and review your mail, maybe talk with other people and study. Sundays were a big day where you could go to a religious service and kind of take it easy more. I mean, you were cleaning a lot of the day, but it wasn't someone yelling at you, bothering you. You just kind of cleaned and moped around for the whole Sunday, and that was kind of your off day.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, as you're training, was any of the stuff that you got in infantry training, was that geared toward the Middle East at all, or was it just generic?
Definitely, both. There was generic, and then there was also the mock communities and some of the, the drill sergeants would definitely talk about being over there. A lot of them, if not all of them, had been over there. So they're definitely geared towards saying, you're going to go over there, and this is what to expect culturally, etc.
Okay, so they are thinking about that at that point, including that. I guess in some earlier versions, say Vietnam era, you'd sort of have 8 weeks of basic and 8 weeks of advanced infantry training after that. That might be in 2 different camps.
Right.
And the basic was normally exactly that, and then the AT might be geared toward a Vietnam or whatever.
Right.
But you've got one long kind of integrated course.
One long, and part of it was, geared toward the Middle East with the mock cities and whatnot. But I think a lot of it was the drill sergeants knowing we were going there, so let's get them ready for where they're going. Whether the Army specifically said that or not, let's prepare them as they're thinking.
So you finish your 16 weeks or so, then what happens to you?
You get a couple weeks off. Luckily I graduated before Christmas, so I got to go home for Christmas. And then Fort Lewis, Washington was my duty station. So you show up there and you get kind of in process, and you show up your unit, and you're the new guy, maybe with some other new guys, and you go from the new guy in basic to the new guy at your unit all over again.
All right. And what unit were you assigned to at that point?
2nd ID, 1st to the 23rd Charlie Company.
All right.
Yep.
And is this a unit that had been deployed to Iraq already?
They had 0304. They were, I believe, the first Stryker unit to be there, and they were based in Mosul, northern Iraq, at that time.
All right. So you've got some guys who had been there already.
They had been there, right.
And seen that. Okay. And then you join the unit. It's a combat unit. It's infantry officially, but what were you actually doing?
I started as a saw gunner, which is a light machine gun. So for 6 months we trained to prepare for. We knew we were going to Iraq, so we trained for Iraq. We knew we were going. I don't think we knew where in Iraq. So all our 6 months was very heavy training geared towards our mission.
All right. Now, your company, I mean, what kinds of equipment does it have or use normally?
We're known for Stryker. So Stryker is a vehicle, and the concept of a Stryker Brigade combat team is an integrated unit of field artillery, medical units, supply units, etc., with infantry together as one unit to be self-sufficient, basically, to a degree. So that was 6 months of training and cross-training with other aspects of our unit for Iraq.
Okay. Now you're doing the cross-training. So you're a machine gunner, but What else are you learning?
Oh, you know, some rudimentary medical training, some communications. You know, if we're calling in mortars, when we call the mortarmen, what do they want to hear? What do they need to hear? Aspects of the striker vehicle, which is kind of the cornerstone of our unit. Fast, mobile, heavy firepower. What, you know, capabilities of the striker. What we're about, how would we move as a unit, our tactics, things like that.
Okay. Now, a striker, that's a wheeled vehicle.
Wheeled vehicle,
Okay.
eight-wheeled.
And kind of an odd cross maybe between a traditional armored car and an armored personnel carrier?
Yeah, it is. It's we come out the back out of a ramp that drops down. You know, you can have a 50 cal mounted on top or a Mark 19 grenade launcher. They're very fast. They can go over a lot of tough terrain. Great vehicles, great vehicles. Probably saved our life more than once.
All right. Now, but they've got tires there, right?
They do.
And
They do.
aren't tires kind of vulnerable to a lot of things?
They can be. They do have run flat systems.
Okay.
And they have an air system to stop from getting high centered. So there's all kinds of things in the vehicle that address some of the drawbacks of having tires.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got, what, 8 or something like that?
8 tires, right.
Okay. Yeah, so if you lose 1 or 2, you still got the
No
other
problem.
ones. Yeah.
No problem.
Okay.
We did lose tires. Yeah.
All right. You're doing that. Now, what was did you have kind of a daily routine there at Fort Lewis?
Yeah, you know, you get up in the morning at, 5:30, which is an ungodly hour nowadays, to me. You do your physical training for an hour, hour and a half. You have an hour after that, I think an hour or 2 hours to shower and to kind of do whatever you want, eat breakfast. Then it was usually some kind of shooting range or tactical training, cross training, talking with the medics, with the engineers, how to make charges, just anything to prepare, you know, whatever was on the schedule that day, you know. So it was very regimented and could be a long. Usually before deployment, we would have longer days than usual, so it would be a full day.
Okay.
Full day.
And then when you're off duty, what was there to do?
Well, you know, the younger guys, obviously there's bars and whatnot. I didn't go out a lot. I was just kind of a barracks rat. I would sit, I would read, watch TV. Yeah, I didn't go out much.
Now, on a base like that, do you now have things like internet access
Oh, for sure.
and all that
I mean,
kind of stuff?
Lewis is a huge base. It's the U.S.'s projection base for the Pacific, of course. It's got movie theaters. You don't ever have to leave. It's got its own stores and PX, and if you never left, it's just its own little self-contained city.
Okay.
So there's plenty to do.
All right. And then is there a substantial town nearby, or?
You had Lakewood and Seattle. Seattle was about 40 minutes.
Okay.
So yeah, there was a surrounding area, which for an infantry base is neat, because a lot of bases for infantry will not have that. It'll be in the middle of nowhere, you know. So I can't complain. It's one of the, I think it's, at the time, it was the most requested base in the Army,
Right.
if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So you're there for 6 months. Now, at what point did you find out when you were actually going to go to Iraq?
Well, unofficially, I knew right when we got there, when they all told us, you know,
Yeah.
we're going, it's a matter of
Yeah.
time. So I think we actually got our paper orders in hands maybe 3 months ahead of time. I don't really remember, but I know getting the paper orders and where we were going was blacked out because it had been changed. Our specific unit, a part of our brigade, was going to Baghdad. The rest were up north for a while, so we were being separated. Yeah.
Okay. Now, before you actually deployed, did they give you leave or anything like that?
We have what we call block leave, which means the whole unit gets to go home and spend time with their family and friends. That's, I think, 2 weeks. So we got that in, I would guess, August time frame, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's now 2006 or?
2006, right.
Okay. What was it? Did you go back to where your parents
I'm
were?
wrong. It was before. We deployed in June.
You deployed in June.
So it was 2 or 3 months before that. It
Okay.
must have been
in the spring
April.
sometime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
April.
Okay. Now, did you go back to where your parents were?
Went
or?
back home, Globe, Arizona. Spent
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
And what was that? What was it like going back home when you know you're going to go off to Iraq and maybe you don't even come back? Or did you
I
think
didn't
about it
really
that
think
way?
about that. No,
Okay.
it was just, hey, I got to go home. It was a vacation.
Okay.
No getting up at 5 in the morning. You know, home cooked food. I think they thought, my family and friends probably thought a lot more about that than I did. That was my experience. It was just, this is my job, and you know, it's nothing special. And
Yeah. At this point, I mean, as you were finishing the training and knew you were going to go off to Iraq, how would you characterize the morale of the unit?
Oh, it was great. The morale was, we're the best fighting force in the world, and you know the country sent us over there, so we're ready. It was great.
Yeah.
You know, I can't complain.
So you're prepared to do the job. Now you're just going to go do it.
Right.
And you're not really worrying about other kinds of consequences or things like that yourself.
No. We just said, hey, we're trained. Let's go do what we're trained to do. Basically.
Okay. Now, so you return to Fort Lewis.
Right.
And then physically, then how do they get you to Iraq?
Okay, so it's a process. So we took a it was a civilian plane, but the military chartered it
Right.
from Fort Lewis over to Maine, Bangor, Maine. Land there. Maine was great. The airport had a bunch of vets and some organizations that welcomed us, and they were handing out phone cards, and it was you know very impressive. So Maine to Germany. On the ground for a few hours in Germany on a part of the airport that's separated for us at that time it was, and then Germany to Kuwait, yeah, which was a staging ground, of course.
Right.
And
Now, did you spend much time in Kuwait, or?
I believe it was about 2 weeks, 2 weeks to a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do they do with you then while
There's
you're there?
more training, more range training, shooting your firearm, practicing malfunction. You know, if your firearm malfunctions, you know, getting it to work properly in a hurry. Tactical training, entering buildings, clearing buildings of danger, you know, as a unit. For physical training, just running in 20-degree heat, whatever, to get used to it. And a lot of things like unloading and loading and you know, things that aren't fun but that are necessary.
And did you do any exercises out in the desert, or did you just stay near the base?
Yeah, I mean, we, if I remember right, we would kit up, we call it, we put our body armor on and we'd walk around with our weapons just to get used to the climate as a squad or as a platoon.
But you weren't getting into the vehicles and conducting an operation someplace, or?
No, I mean, we were using the vehicles, but we weren't, I don't think the base could really handle that, or they didn't do that for some reason.
Yeah.
So not that I remember, no.
Okay. Yeah, and then what kind of accommodations did you have?
Just a big tent, just a big tent that could handle our platoon with some wall units of air conditioners that were running full blast all day that did their best.
All right. Yeah, and when you're talking about a sort of weapons malfunction, is that mostly, is dust the main enemy?
So dust, dirt, or you know, if you hadn't cleaned your weapon properly, but hopefully that's not the case. But so you're at a range and you're shooting it and it malfunctioned. You identify the malfunction and how am I going to clear it and get that weapon working again. But definitely dust and dirt are going to be a factor, sure.
Yeah. And what kinds of precautions do you take to kind of protect the weapons against getting gunked up? Or?
Well, of course, proper cleaning and maintenance and proper lubrication. You know, you can't under-lubricate because then you're going to get a malfunction because it's not lubricated. You can't over-lubricate because then the dust will cling to it. So just knowing the little tricks of the trade of proper maintenance and being, you know, that's just a must.
All right. Now you're there for a couple of weeks. Do you get kind of antsy after a while and say, well, let's get on with it? Or?
Yeah, because you're just, you know, the game's out there and you're still in the locker room and it's like, we're here, let's might as well get this done.
All right. Okay, and the orders finally come to move out, then what happens next?
Yeah, we get on a military plane, we fly to Baghdad, and they make the announcement that we're in Iraqi airspace, this and that, and we get over Baghdad and they do this spiral landing to thwart missiles in case they get fired at us, and we'd land, and it was kind of a crazy landing. You get used to it after a while, but then we get off, and then we're at called the Bayat complex, Baghdad International Airport complex, which is part of Camp Victory, Camp Liberty, giant complex on the western side of Baghdad. So we get off, and we don't know what to expect. Are we in a war zone? Are we not? We are, but we're not. We're on a base, so then it's all logistics, getting our equipment off, where are we going to live, and et cetera.
Now, had you brought the vehicles with you, or just the?
They had arrived ahead of time on another transport, so they were there. They were there, and they were staged somewhere ready for us. Yeah.
All right. So as you're first there and you're on the base, what indications are there that there's a war going on someplace?
I mean, other than all the military activity and Humvees and Strykers running around, you know, that first day I don't remember that there was.
Right.
So, I mean, you know you're there, but it's a giant complex, and you know it's hot, you know you're not at home, you know you see Arabic writing that you're not used to. So other than that, it was just a kind of we're here, but where's here?
Okay.
You know?
Now, would you be actually based there on that base?
Most of the time. Most of
Okay.
the time but we also did operations where we'd stay on other bases a week or two at a time or
All right.
longer.
Okay, and then what's the first mission you got once you're there and set up?
After all our briefings and going through all the information we needed to hear, our first mission was basically a presence patrol, we call it. We're showing we're here, we're the new guys. So I remember being in the vehicle, and unless you're in the hatches on your weapon, if you're inside and you're not in the hatch, you can't see unless you look at one of the screens which has a camera which can see. If you can't see that, you can't see anything. So the ramp drops and we get out, and you don't know what to expect. You're thinking in your head, of course, is this like World War II, like Vietnam? What's going to happen? And it was hot and bright, and it was a neighborhood with trash everywhere, and there's some people mulling about. And of course, we're looking around, looking up, and making sure there's no one looking at us. And that was my first experience on the ground in Iraq. Nothing happened that day,
Right.
which was good. But I think we just patrolled the streets. Maybe search some houses, and that was the first day in Iraq. Yeah.
All right. Now, had they, in the briefings and so forth, what had they told you about the sort of the larger situation that you were in?
At that point, I think I remember they identified the threats, which are IEDs, explosive devices. I think they'd taken some sniper fire, and there were some militias in town. Some may be associated with Al Qaeda. That was they didn't know, but hypothetically. There was some Sunni on Shia violence, some political struggling. That was the threat briefing we got. So they said, they're fighting each other, they're fighting us, be aware, et cetera, et cetera. Be aware of IEDs was a big threat, and it still is. That progressed to house IEDs, H-beds we call them, house-borne IEDs, which is a whole new threat.
All right. And when did you first encounter or hear about those?
Towards the end of our tour, I remember we got the intelligence, so we practiced things to look for if we're entering a house. What kind of trigger device could it be, where to be hidden, etc. And sure enough, about 2 months, 3 months before we went home, we got sent to, I don't know, a couple hours northeast of Baghdad, an area in Diyala province where allegedly Iranian weapons were coming through. So we were supposed to secure this area, which had become a hotbed of transport of weapons and whatever else Iran wanted to send. And our Bravo company went into a house, one of the platoons went into the house, and it blew up. And that was when we realized, well, the intelligence was correct. Sometimes you just think, well, for once, but in any case, and I think Bravo company lost maybe half a squad or a whole squad. And so that was a big deal because we still had more houses to clear that day and for the rest of the tour.
Right.
So, that kind of puts, yeah.
All right. So that's coming along later. So let's go back now to the beginning of the tour. What are you doing mostly in the first couple of months you're there?
Well, it just differs. Some days it's a presence patrol. You're just like a street cop walking around, looking around, then you have some days where you're searching 5 miles worth of houses for weapons or for people. Some days it's 3 o'clock in the morning raids because there's a bad guy at a house. We have intelligence. We're going to go snatch him up and get him. Some days it's go take a house on the corner of such and such avenue and stay there for 3 days and look around and see what you see and hide out. Don't let anybody know you're there, but report back or engage the enemy if he engages you. So all different missions. It just depends what they need at the time.
Okay, and you're doing this largely within the city or the environs of Baghdad?
Right, definitely urban
Okay.
combat. Yeah.
All right. What impression were you developing of the Iraqis themselves as you're doing this?
Well, a lot of them were angry because they didn't understand what we were doing when we did it. For example, culturally, we went into these houses to find weapons or bad people. Well, culturally, they didn't want us to come barging in their house because it's rude. They need to put their women in the back, etc. Well, you can't exactly explain to somebody, especially if they don't know your language, why you're barging into their house in a hurry. And it's really to save their life. If I come in here and I find it's safe and there's no weapons, I don't have to shoot anybody. But if I barge in and you're running around trying to hide your women, I don't know where you are or what you're doing, of course I'm going to be a little angry. we've had to get guys and sit them down, you know, and say, you know, you need to stay here. Now, he might be just a normal person trying to do his thing culturally, take his wife, put her in the back, etc. But if I let him do that, that puts everybody in danger. So it's you know, they say, why are they being so rude? Who knows what they thought of us, but I'm sure they thought we were very rude.
Okay. So you don't have any means of communicating with them as you're doing this?
Sometimes I have a translator, sometimes not. Sometimes the translator was horrible. He could barely speak English, so it just depended on the mission. We were often short of a translator. Sometimes we'd have to share a translator with another unit. So it just depended.
Yeah. Now, what sorts of people are they using as translators?
Some are American citizens. I imagine some were naturalized, some maybe not. Some just Arabic speakers from whatever country, you know, maybe Iraq, maybe. I know we ran into one from the Sudan. He's an Arabic speaker. I don't know what his story was, but yeah, just it was. I'm sure they were pulling their hair out trying to find Arabic speakers, especially in a war zone, you know, because they have to tag along with us and it's dangerous. And
so don't at this point have any substantial supply of actual American military personnel who can speak Arabic?
No, I imagine they're still struggling to this day. Yeah.
I mean, did any of the men in your unit have any language training, or was that just not?
A few of us went to a 2-week, I mean, really basic course. You know, we knew some phrases and some numbers, but nothing that we needed for the day to actually establish and get intelligence. What we needed is communication to figure out who the bad guys are, where they are, what they're doing. Because you don't have that, you're just kind of walking blind.
All right. Now, as the sort of the months go on, sort of the latter half of 06 and into the beginning of 07 there, did you have any feel yourself for how the larger effort was going, or if things were working or not, or?
You know, I don't think we ever thought about it. At least I didn't think about it. I just thought, here's our mission, here's what we're doing. You know, I didn't really focus on anything else because it really didn't matter, and nothing else really mattered except here we are. How far into the tour are we? What is our mission? What does tomorrow bring? The big picture, I don't remember ever thinking about.
So you just have had enough to do and enough to worry about that you've got to stay focused on that.
Yeah, there was no talk of the bigger picture world events, and we didn't care.
Yeah, or you know, how, is this working or anything else like that?
Right now it's hot, we're tired, what are we going to do in the next hour? That was what we were thinking about.
Okay. What sorts of casualties did your unit take in this period?
Couple guys that hit by sniper fire, small arms, mortars. We got a couple guys that hit by IEDs in the first third of our tour. We were in a striker on one main road, and they got hit about 300 meters away. We knew what it was, we just didn't know if we got hurt. Turned out the driver and the TC or VC tank commander, who's the guy who's talking to the driver and responsible for the vehicle, both of them got killed. Those were the first casualties I remember from our unit. Yeah. Yeah.
So basically, the casualties happen, but they weren't necessarily that common.
A lot more guys got injured and survived, I think, just because of our great medical training. So we had, if I remember, in our, I don't know if it was our battalion, I think we had maybe a dozen or so casualties, and then a lot of, a few wounded here and there. Guys lost their limbs. So a lot more guys survived, which was good.
But casualties, I mean, generally, like as I'm using the term, I'm including wounded along with killed, at least anybody wounded seriously enough to take out.
We had plenty of casualties. I mean, versus other wars, we were great, great. But we had a first sergeant in another company lost his leg. Guys get hit, so there were definitely casualties. But I don't think to the degree where we're saying, we're nothing for us to worry about. We knew we were going to take casualties, and we expected, I would imagine, the numbers we took.
Okay. And it's the sort of thing where basically there's not enough of them to really affect the combat performance of the unit.
No, definitely not the combat, and I don't think enough to affect morale to a great degree. I think when someone got hurt, it pissed us off, basically, yeah.
Now, would you get replacements for any of the personnel you lost, or does the unit just get a little bit smaller?
It just depends. It depends on Big Army. That's a higher decision that I know. We got a couple guys in our platoon just randomly. I don't know why, or it just whatever. They just showed up. So I don't know what they were thinking.
All right.
Yeah.
So there is some movement around or bringing
Right.
in a personnel. But on the whole, you're with pretty much the same group the whole time.
Definitely, right.
All right. Now, do you think that helps you in terms of your function, your operation?
Oh, for sure. I mean, even if you don't get along with everybody, at least you know them and their habits, and kind of the chemistry helps. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like having a brother you don't like, he's still your brother, and you know him, and so, yeah, definitely.
All right. So now, do you get any downtime?
You know, when you're not on patrol and you're not doing something that needs to be done, you know, you're in your little housing unit, and yeah, I mean, you can go to the gym, you go to the chow hall. Very slow internet service, so that was kind of not worth it. There was TVs that had been passed around from unit to unit, so we had this big TV with mud all over it that was functional but didn't look very good, but that worked. And so we'd watch movies. There was people selling DVDs, you know, local nationals on the base selling DVDs. So a lot of the downtime was movies or sleeping, or working out. Yeah.
All right. And what kinds of things were they feeding you?
You know, I can't complain. The chow hall, you know, they did their best. They had steak. It wasn't, you know, filet mignon. It wasn't cooked to our specifications, but they did have steak sometimes, and very soft, chewy lobster. So versus, you know, let's say Vietnam vets, I think we ate great. They even had ice cream. So the food was fine, you know.
Okay. But they haven't yet brought in Pizza Hut or something?
Actually, yeah. At the next camp over, Camp Victory, I think there was a Pizza Hut and a Subway. So we would walk or borrow a Humvee, and we would actually go there and get to eat that. And actually, there, on our base, there was a Burger King. So that got old, but it was, you know, I can't complain. It was.
Right. And you mentioned that when you flew out through Bangor, you had people giving you phone cards and so forth. Do you have access to phone service?
Right.
Or?
There's a trailer with phones, pay phones, and you can go in there and use your calling card. They would shut off sometimes because of whatever reason, but and they were always full, of course. So, but you get a call home if you could wait in line or go at 3 in the morning when fewer people are there, of course. Yeah.
All right. Now, does your unit's mission or assignment change at all over the course of time? You were doing all this regular patrolling, and then.
Yeah, I mean. There's about 2 or 3 times when it kind of changed, but in general it was a handful of missions we were used to, and you know, at battalion and brigade level they might be strategically thinking something else, but it didn't concern us. They just said move here. So it was either a presence patrol, high value target acquisition, where you go at 3 in the morning and grab somebody. SKT, small kill teams, where you go and take a building and you just wait for bad guys if there are any. So there's a handful of missions we just did over and over, and
All right.
those were some of them.
Okay. And then did you have periods where your company or platoon was operating for extended times off of the base?
Well, every day we went off the base, but yeah, we got picked up and we went southwest of Baghdad. I can't remember the exact area, but it was within an hour or two. What happened was the 10th Mountain Division had lost a few guys. They were gone, 3 or 4 guys, and they needed our help. So we got attached to their unit, and we would patrol these farmlands. We called Operation Vietnam in our unit because it was from the city. Now we're in wheat fields and you know, farmland. It's rural and open space.
Yeah.
We felt naked. You know, we were used to buildings and yeah, people can shoot you from the building, but you can also run in a building. Now we're in open field, looking for these guys from the 10th Mountain. Getting shot at from places that, you know, from a building far away, and we're in a field, and so it was a totally different experience. So we're there for about, I think, 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks. Yeah.
All right. And if you're being fired at some distance by a sniper, do you have any means of returning fire effectively? Or
Oh yeah, we have.
Yeah.
I mean, we have Apache gunships, we have mortars, and we have our weapons. So it wasn't something we weren't used to. It's just a matter of the area.
Right.
Different variables to deal with the danger. So firing back was yeah.
But I mean, could you locate the target and so forth?
Not always. We didn't have, I know technology now, they have technology to actually see where the sniper is or the gunshots. At that time, we didn't have it. At least it didn't come down to our level. So if it wasn't someone who saw it,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah. And if it's from some distance, that can be awfully difficult.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of we're going to return fire if that's the thing to do at the time.
Okay.
You know, are there civilians in the area? Or, you know, can we effectively return fire? All these questions you got to answer when you do it.
All right.
So.
Now, what level of technology stuff did you have? Do you have night vision equipment and things like that?
Night vision. ability from the striker to see at a distance and fire with their weapons. I don't know how their weapon system is. Some of it's classified, so I don't know how much I could talk. But just a means to find the enemy from a distance and hit him with different weapon systems. Apaches were our great friends because it's kind of comforting to have a helicopter above you. Yeah.
Yeah. How well does the night vision stuff actually work? I mean, if you're wandering around out through the street someplace.
Right. It depends on how much moonlight you have and kind of ambient light. If we have a good moonlit night, you can see. I mean, everything's going to look green, but you're going to see a lot better than the other guy.
Okay.
So it depends. You know, if you're in a, especially in an urban area, some of the shadows will play with you a little bit, but it's better than not having it. Put it that way.
Okay. But if there's really not much ambient light at all, then
it's still going to help. You're still going to see better than the other guy. It's going to be in shades of green or darker green or grays even. Yeah.
All right. Now you're there through the period into 07 when they were beginning the surge strategy and so forth. And to what extent did you notice any change or difference in what you were doing or what was happening?
I don't remember any change. Just you know, as far as I knew, we just had more troops, but our missions were kind of the same old missions. You know, go take a house, stay there for a week, look around, see where bad guys are, do a presence patrol, do a 3 o'clock in the morning high value target acquisition. You know, same old missions that I remember.
Because some of the things that in principle were part of the strategy, one of them was involving breaking up units into small units and dispersing them and having them stay in one place for extended periods. But that is sort of what you had been doing some of anyway, when you'd occupy a house and stay there?
Not the length of time they were talking about strategically, but I do remember guarding an area where the engineers were making what we call a COP, Combat Outpost, which is a strategy that you're talking about. So we were occupying it while the engineers could build it because we were their firepower. The engineers were setting up barriers and making that for future units.
Right. Yeah. So you're kind of in the setup stage, sort of at that point. And so, I mean, another thing that sort of became part of it was finding better ways to deal with the local culture in terms of how you go into a house and things like that. Did your orders change for that, or did you just keep doing it the same way?
No, I mean, we learned on our own the methods we could do that accomplished our mission, but that would try to minimize some of those variables just because to make their life easier. Because the fewer Iraqis you have mad at you, just the easier your mission is. Now, that can't always be accomplished, but you do your best. You know?
Okay. So what could you do? What did you learn to do that made that going into a house any easier?
Part of it was maybe using some phrases in Arabic just to calm them down, let them know, why they're there, why we're here. You know, maybe a couple guys go and follow the women, and once the guy puts them away, you know, the male of the house puts them away and sits the male down, everything is calmer instead of just rushing in at once. We let him do that, but we follow him. The problem is sometimes, you know, who knows if a female's hiding a weapon for the male or whatever. So, you know, I don't remember us searching any females because, of course, that was culturally taboo. But oftentimes we would try to get a female soldier with us, and we would have her search the females if we could, which wasn't a lot.
All right. Now, within your actual platoon wouldn't have women in it because that's still a combat MOS.
No, no women. I think we borrowed a cook at one point to help us do that, but that was very rare. I think she was with us maybe 5 times. Yeah, we could have used a lot more help with that.
All right. And did the quality of the interpreters ever change, or did you just kind of have the same issue?
No, just the same. Some good, some some are better than others. That's all it was just relative. Yeah.
All right. At the sort of the beginning of those last months when you were there, was there any kind of uptick in casualties or confrontations, or was it still pretty much just where it had been?
I think about halfway through and then to the end, I think we had a slight uptick in firefights that I remember. Yeah, maybe we're just used to them. I'm not sure, but I think we had more in the middle and towards the end than the beginning that I remember.
Yeah. Because some of it was as the Americans are trying to actually, you're bringing in more people, but you're really trying to actually now carry out a strategy. When part of what will happen is that they will fight back and start shooting at you, and so there is a bad part of it before you wind up making it work.
And I think I remember, part of the reason we thought that was they're gonna test us. They're gonna see this change, and they're gonna confront the change.
Right.
And at least from I remember, we did our job enough so they pulled back and it got better towards the very end. And I think when we left, it eventually just kept improving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they realized, okay, you were finding ways to adapt to the situation,
Right,
and get things under better control.
Right.
Now, in terms of sort of, how well did you know sort of the geography or the lay of the land in and around Baghdad? Did you learn to recognize neighborhoods or areas?
Oh, for sure. We had nicknames, you know, RPG Alley East, RPG Alley West, you know, Sadr City was up north. So we got to, you know, it's a big city, but there are areas we knew well and we could recognize by sight alone.
All right. Did you go into Sadr City much, or mostly stay out?
We went on the edge a few times, and we got in a little firefight there one day, but I don't remember going deep into Sadr City at that point. There were some. It was a hotbed of kind of. We didn't want to go in there because politically it was not good at the time to go in there. So we could have, but at the time the decision was let's try to make some friends and not confront al-Sadr at the time.
Right.
They didn't know how to deal with him, so we didn't want to confront him yet, I guess, was what it was.
All right. Now, did you ever get into the green zone?
Oh, yeah, we'd pick up our interpreters there, we'd go eat there, we'd stop. Yeah, they had a great chow hall. Yeah, that was our favorite part of the...
Yeah. I mean, sort of, and did that area have sort of a different feel to it than the rest of Baghdad?
Yeah, it was a little safer, kind of like being on, it was a base, so it was just an area where you could kind of let your guard down a little bit, get something to eat, and you weren't looking around, and your switch wasn't on. You were basically, you know, I felt safe in the green zone at the time. I mean, there might be some mortar fire, but that's a big base, so, yeah.
All right. Now, if you kind of think over that, because you're there about, what, 15 months?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Over that time, are there particular events that kind of stand out in your memory, or just things that you saw or observed?
Yeah, actually, there's one that does. I think the biggest one was when we got mortared. We were used to small arms. We were kind of used to IEDs to a degree. The first time we got mortared must have been right around the mid-tour. So I was on a rooftop and we started taking fire. So we're all returning fire, and then we hear explosions, and we don't know if they're IEDs. You know, we were suspecting they're IEDs. Well, then they got closer. Then we realized these are mortars coming in, and so who knows who the guys that are shooting might be former Army guys because they're trained, obviously.
Yeah.
So they're walking them in, and you talking about feeling naked. You feel naked when mortars are coming in because you can't hide behind a wall with a mortar. So it turned out we got in a firefight that lasted, I don't know, must have been a few minutes. And when we pulled off the roof, got to the vehicle, one of the mortars, they were big mortars, 80s or 120s, hit right before one of our vehicles, and it turned out one of our squad leaders got hit, I think by small arms and part of the shrapnel. So we rushed into I think we went to the green zone actually that day. Rushed into the green zone, it turned out he lost his eye, had some shoulder injuries, some facial injuries. He survived, he was fine, but that was different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if you're being mortared, again, are there means of figuring out where the mortar is firing from and responding to it?
I'm sure they can triangulate to a degree, but at that time, it wasn't enough a threat where we were used to it.
Right.
So I don't think we had anything prepared, or I didn't think we had any mortars firing back. I think we just called in some air cover from Apaches if we had it that day. I don't remember. I just remember getting in the firefight, and then we had to evac our guy. So yeah, that day was just, it wasn't expected. And
yeah. Now after that, so you got mortared again periodically after that, or?
I mean, the bases would. I don't remember getting targeted like we were that day.
Yeah.
So I know on the base they had a system to triangulate where the mortars were coming from, and they had a system to hit the incoming mortars with a Gatling type gun that they were experimenting with at the time.
Yeah.
Very loud, and it woke us up all the time. You know, they would always test fire it, and yeah. So.
All right. Now, other things or impressions that kind of stand out for you, just from living in Iraq, maybe, or whatever.
To me, you know, I grew up in Arizona. I've been in Mexico a lot. It reminded me of just being in Mexico, a very poor country. Of course, different language, different culture, and then I'd kind of look around and see palm trees. It reminded me of Arizona, Phoenix. You know, it's just some people liked us, some people would stare at us, and you just knew dang well they didn't want us there, and they just, you'd see it in their eyes. You know, why are you here? What are you doing? And You just got used to it. They didn't like us, some of them, but oh well.
Yeah. I mean, did you have any positive impressions of them, or some of them maybe who did like you, or at least?
Yeah, I mean, some we would help. I remember we were in a house for about a week, and a guy came with his daughter, so we let him in, searched him, and his daughter had a fever, and our medic, I don't know if he gave her an IV, but he must have given her some Tylenol and gave her some M&Ms, you know, we sent them on their way. So things like that was kind of neat, just something different, something positive, you know.
All right. Now, when you went over, do you know how long you were going to be there?
We thought 12 months. And I was in, I think, Dallas Airport coming back off leave when I heard the surge on CNN, and I knew it affected all of us, so.
Okay, so you had to leave home then someplace in that 15 months? Or?
Yeah, everybody gets 2 weeks.
Okay.
2-week leave, yeah. Yep.
All right. So basically with the surge part, then your unit simply gets extended?
We got an extra 3 months, right? So I think we had about 3 months left and then turned into 6, which to us was a lifetime, because we were towards the end, we were kind of like at the finish line, and then it got extended, and yeah, that was like, whew. A lot of guys were like, that's a long time, 6 more months, half a year, you know, so that was an effect. That definitely had an effect, yeah.
All right. And then you do now, as you finally do kind of wind down toward the end in 07 now, you're counting the days down or that kind of thing?
Actually, we weren't. We were kind of to a degree. We were counting the missions down, because that's what we cared about. So we got sent northeast of Baghdad to Diyala for about 3 weeks a month, doing some missions there. That's when the Houseborn ID hit and our Bravo company got hit.
Right.
So about 3 missions out, we were supposed to have our last mission. We get back, you have one more. Go out again, one more. Go out again. Finally, they said, we're going back to Baghdad. This is it. And we thought, well, who knows? So we get in a slight firefight on the way down to Baghdad. Get to Baghdad, and our platoon sergeant says, we're done. Download your ammo, take everything apart. What he was doing was watching out for us. What he was doing was saying, okay, they said we're done. I'm going to make sure that we are combat ineffective, which is it's good leadership. So if something comes down, he can say, look, you told us we were done. Our weapons are taken apart. Our optics are off. Our ammo is downloaded. Call on somebody else.
Right.
That was when it was like, whew.
Okay. Now, over the course of the 15 months, did your own assignment change? You start off as a machine gunner?
I was a saw gunner, and then by the time we deployed, I became an assistant gunner to a machine gunner. So I had an M4 and I carried ammo. A couple months in, 2, 3, 4 months in, I got switched to carrying the bigger machine gun, and then I had someone carry my ammo with an M4. So I became a 240 gunner, which is the big firepower for the platoon. So it's important that weapon works. There's 2 of us, but those are the biggest weapons in the platoon other than the 50 cals on the vehicles.
Right.
So if your weapon's malfunction or doesn't work, people will notice. Because the sound of that weapon, I've been told, they said, when you fired, it was like a security blanket, because it was a big, strong thump, and, you know, so, yeah.
All right. And so did you have sort of a standard procedure if you got into some kind of firefight for what the squad will do, or?
I mean, you have your general guidelines, but there's going to be so many variables. Once someone shoots, you know, obviously find cover and return fire is the main thing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you're going to communicate and maneuver on the enemy. So it just there's so many variables, you know, who's firing, where are they firing from, are there civilians? There's just so many.
Yeah, and your weapon is really there for covering fire, and the guys with the lighter weapons maybe go out in front of you someplace toward the enemy, or?
You know, hypothetically, in many cases, yes. So in many scenarios, if we're getting fired at, my goal is to get to the rooftop and start laying down fire from where the fire is coming from. That would be a good guideline for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You get to the end of it. You know, they fly again. You know, they fly. Do you go back via Kuwait and stuff, or you go somewhere else?
We flew. Yeah, we left the vehicles there. I think at least one of them for another unit. In any case, we flew from Baghdad to Kuwait for another 2 weeks. Kuwait for 2 weeks. I think we just loaded stuff, cleaned, you know, wound down, and then went home. Went through Ireland and back through Maine again, and back to Fort Lewis.
All right. Now, at this point, sort of how much time do you have left on your enlistment?
Actually, I re-enlisted over there now that I think about it.
Okay.
I got a knock on my door, and the guy said, what do you want to do? And I re-enlisted over there. I don't even remember what month it was, but I'd been there for a while. So 3 more years. And I got back, and I think I was due out at the end of '08, early '09 or something. So for the Army, that's not a lot of time left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So now that you're back, are you just based at Fort Lewis again now? 'Cause that's
I'm at Fort Lewis, and we got a lot of downtime because they give you a good few months to kind of, you do train a little bit, but for 5 or 6 months after you get back, you're really not doing a whole lot. And so I was putting my packet for officer candidate school. So I'm working my packet. I'm trying to hunt down the S shop, the intelligence shop, to do my background check, and it's doing this paperwork. And then I get this email that I got detailed as a recruiter. And I go to my first sergeant. I said, "What is this all about?" And he said, "Actually, recruiting duty supersedes your OCS. If we wanted to send you to Ranger School, which we did, that's not going to happen now. None of that. So no Ranger School, no OCS. I got sent to recruiting school in Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
All right.
I was not happy.
Okay. What was that experience like?
Yeah, boring. Rules and regulations, PowerPoint. It's horrible. Not fun. Yeah, I met a good guy there who ended up serving with me on a detailed recruiting assignment in California where we ended up. But other than meeting him and hanging out and working out, we just sat all day through PowerPoint, and it was horrible.
And how long was that program?
Oh, I think it was 8 weeks.
Oh boy.
It was horrible.
8 weeks of bad PowerPoints.
Army bad PowerPoints, which is worse.
That's probably some part of purgatory or something where you get to do that.
It was horrible.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess you had been used to life in the field and all of this kind of stuff too, and you had been
big change.
Yeah, and your plans had been okay, if it's Ranger School, OCS, that kind of thing.
Right. More of the same.
Yeah, keep up with that and that at the next level. And instead you're doing this. So where do they send you as a recruiter?
Well, I was blessed in that sense. I got put in Salinas, California, which is close to Monterey, which is a beautiful area. So Salinas is a little more blue collar, so it is a tough area to recruit in. But California coast, you can't complain. It wasn't bad.
Okay. I get you said blue collar area tougher to recruit in.
Oh, Salinas is just people aren't qualified. You got a lot of gangs, felons, people with no education. They're not qualified. Who am I going to put in the Army?
So it's not necessarily a question of people maybe not wanting to sign up.
Right.
It's that
they're not qualified.
they're not going to meet the standards.
Right. It's just a tough area. Heavy gang influence. And as I served as a recruiter, the standard to get in got a lot tougher. Now I don't think you can get in without you can't have a GED. You have to be a high school diploma from an accredited high school. Back when I started, it could be a GED, some random high school that's who knows if it's accredited. So they were just letting a lot of people in because they needed us.
Okay, so but by this time now you've had the surge, and now you're getting into the drawdown, and you don't need as large an army necessarily.
I think that was their thinking, and of course, they just thought we don't need as many, but also we want quality soldiers. We don't want people causing trouble for our own units and disciplinary problems and whatnot.
But I suppose also, again, there's so many MOSs that are things other than combat infantry or whatever.
Right.
You're kind of actually in a way a small group.
Right.
And there's all the others, and for them they would need more technical knowledge maybe, or...
Not necessarily. I mean, and generally you can be qualified if you have your diploma and you don't break the law, etc. And then you pass your little initial test, and then if you're qualified, that's your MOS you can choose.
Right.
So you'd be surprised some of the guys would just, like me, just want an infantry no matter what. Guys would have a degree, come in and say, I want to be infantry, and I'd say, okay, fine.
Yeah. Not so characteristic of the Vietnam era necessarily.
No.
All right. Okay. You do that. So how long then did you stay on as a recruiter in Salinas?
It's a 3-year assignment. So
Okay.
I was there for 3 years, and actually I extended 2 or 3 months because you have to just when you're on orders. They tell you, well, you don't have to, but you're going to extend for 3 months. So that was December of last year.
All right.
Yeah.
At what point did you decide that 2 hitches was enough?
I think during recruiting, I said, okay, I can go back to the regular Army. We call it the regular Army because recruiting is not regular. But I'd already been kind of softened with the whole recruiting life. You show up at 9 o'clock, get off at 5 o'clock, and it wasn't, we don't call it the real Army. So it was just, I just gotten used to civilian life, basically. So I thought, okay, I just start a master's and finish a master's that year, which is another good thing while you're recruiting, you have time. And that was when I decided, okay, going back to 5 a.m. wake-ups is just, not going to happen. You know?
If you had never really stopped, you could have kept doing it.
I might have, yeah. I think I would have stayed in, at least gone to OCS and Ranger School, etc. But once you stop, it's just hard to get back into that mindset of the real Army life, yeah.
All right. And then what did you take your master's degree in?
Diplomacy with an emphasis in terrorism, yeah.
Okay. And where did you do that?
Norwich University.
Which is?
In Vermont.
In Vermont.
Yeah, good military school.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. All right. So did you actually go up to Vermont to finish, or did you do it
I had
all
to
online?
go and do basically your orals there, and then you walk there.
Okay.
But I graduated like 3 or 4 months later when I finished my last class.
Okay. But you're able to do the classes online?
Right.
Kind of
Stressful year, yeah.
All right. And then what kind of work did you wind up going into after that?
Now I basically work for oil and gas industry, negotiating contracts and researching property. Yeah, totally different field, but that's what brought me to Michigan.
All right. So so what's going on in Michigan just that has them busy?
Basically, you know, years ago when they would drill for oil and gas, they could only go down so far. Now they can go down farther and use different techniques, go sideways and whatnot. So they can go get the deeper stuff that's down there now.
All
So,
right.
yeah.
Okay. To look back over the time that you spent in the service, how do you think that affected you? What did you learn from it?
What did I learn? I think I don't complain about things anymore. That you know, like a hot shower is great, even though I've had a hot shower for the last 3 or 4 years. You know, you're just thankful for things that you have every day that normally you'd overlook. You know, sometimes we slept on a dirt floor or set of stairs, or you know, I remember being on what's called